You know, when we were thinking about the overarching year video, I thought we need something new. We need something fresh. And that's when we thought of the idea to do exactly the same as what we did last year. Welcome back to the Chisholm Hunter channel. My name is Harrison, as always. And on this channel, we pretty much just talk about watches. And that's where this video comes from. This original video, never seen before video of my watch collection 2022. Let's start with my latest addition to the collection. Let's start with the Tissot PRX Powermatic 80 green dial. This specific watch has the model number T137.407.11.091.00. I tell you what, Tissot should really reconsider their model numbers, because that is just absolutely ridiculous. But let's talk a little bit about why I bought this watch, when I bought this watch, and what it means to me. So I've always been obsessed with 70s sort of inspired designs, Genta inspired designs. The Patek Philippe Nautilus is one of them, the AP Royal Oak is another one. But the problem with these watches is they're so expensive. They're so to one side of the spectrum that they're just out of reach for me, and they probably will never be in reach. But then Tissot released the Tissot PRX. And I liked them, but I didn't love them. Until this came, until the green dial. The green dial really drew me to this watch, and there's a couple of reasons why it drew me to the watch. One is that I love the style and aesthetic of this watch, but I didn't want to be maybe a bit more mainstream. I tend to go for things that are a little bit more off-piste, and I feel like black and blue dials are a lot more mainstream. They're a lot more popular, and I'm always not attracted to the popular stuff. I kind of go off-piste. And when they brought out this green dial, it wasn't overly flashy. It wasn't overly green. It wasn't a bright green. It was almost black, in fact. In fact, when I'm looking at it in this light, it literally looks black. But there's a subtle hint of green. So the green dial was a big thing to me. And then you also have the 70s inspired bracelet, and the bracelet is honestly incredible for the price. And that brings me on to the next point, which of course is the price. This is around £500. And for 500 quid, you get a Powermatic 80 movement with 80 hours of power. Now yes, this is an ETA version, it's an ETA movement, but that is not an issue. The reason that this can be priced the way it is because it has that ETA version. And ETA versions, ETA movements, are tried and tested amongst tons of watch brands in the industry. The reason that the watch brand buy them in the first place is because they're great movements. They're powerhouses of movements. And that's kind of what drew me to this watch. That, as well as the fact that it just looks so cool on the wrist. The thing about this Tissot PRX is I believe it's more of a work watch. It's more of a smart casual or suit and tie watch because it is quite 70s inspired. It's quite sporty. It's not maybe as rugged as the Hamilton Khaki Field or the Omega Seamaster, which isn't a bad thing. It's just that's where it suits. I think it's a little bit more dressy than these sports watches, which is great. That's what I needed, so that's what I got. And I would argue, for the price you're paying for this watch, it is the best release in the last 5 years in terms of value for money. And I will fight my corner here. Let me know in the comments if you disagree, but I honestly think that. And that was my Tissot PRX, but let's move on to our next watch. And this is a familiar favorite. It's the Hamilton Khaki Field. You guys might recognize this from last year, actually. This was my everyday wearer for a good chunk of time, but it's not my everyday wearer anymore. And there's a reason why it's not my everyday wearer anymore. And I'm gonna put a picture of it up on the screen, or a video of it up on the screen, and I just want you guys to take a close look. Can you see something wrong with the watch? It's broken. Now, the reason that this is broken is no testament to Hamilton's quality. I believe this is a rugged, brilliant watch. It was not Hamilton's fault, is what I'm trying to say. I'm just an idiot. I went up in Monroe in Scotland taking photos and videos as I normally do. And I pulled the crown out to change the time. I don't even know why I was changing the time when I was up in the mountains. I was just kind of infatuated by the watch. I then fell, hit the watch's crown while it was open off of a rock. And, you know, when you hit a watch off a rock, something's got to give. And this was a shame because honestly, this watch was my everyday beater. It's the watch that I could take up these hills, these mountains and not worry about. But thankfully, I gave Hamilton a call and Hamilton said that they can service this watch, they can get it back in working order for me, which is fantastic. So thank you, Hamilton, for doing that. I'll be sending this off pretty soon. But let's get into some of the specs and why it was my everyday beater for so long. This model comes in at 38mm. So yes, it is a little bit smaller, but when you're taking it up hills, when you're taking it up Monroes, when you're out exploring and adventuring, you don't want a hefty hunk of a watch on your wrist. And there's a couple of different reasons why you don't want a hefty hunk of a watch. One is that they're more easily damaged. When they have a bigger surface area, you can imagine that they're just more likely to be hit off of stuff. But this is quite a slim, sort of small watch that sits and hugs your wrist quite closely. And I think that's partly why it lasted so long in my life. I'm quite the adventurer, I go up hills, I do a lot in the watch vlog, I recently went to Zermatt, so I do put my watches through their paces. And this survived pretty well. Also, it has a beautiful matte texture on the metal of this watch, which is stainless steel, and a NATO strap. Now, for my adventure watches, I do tend to stick with either rubber or NATO because they don't get scratched as much as a bracelet. That's why I tend to stick with bracelet watches for my work watches or dress watches, and for my outdoors watches, it's a NATO or a rubber. And another nice detail that I really like about this watch is how readable it is. It is so easy to read, especially in kind of low light conditions because it's black on white. And in terms of contrast, you can't get a higher contrast than black on white. So that is the Hamilton Khaki Field. It's been an awesome watch. I've broken it, but it will be fixed one day. Next up is my dress watch, my perfect dress watch. Now, I'm a huge fan of Grand Seiko watches. I love the spring drive movements. I love the Zaratsu polishing on the bracelet and the faces. I love the look and style of these futuristic watches. And I love that they're doing something different in the industry. So I had to get this model. This model comes in at 40mm. It's quite a slim, compact watch on the wrist and is just the perfect dress watch. I mean, the way that the metal catches the light is just mesmerizing. That Zaratsu polishing is mesmerizing. The way the bracelet sits and feels on the wrist is fantastic. And the fact that it's limited edition to 558 pieces is even more incredible. Now, I picked this up on the pre-owned market, and I was very lucky to pick it up on the pre-owned market because you cannot find these watches anywhere now. This is one of my prized watches, I would say, and it's one that I will never sell. When I pick a watch, I tend to go for things that are a little bit obscure, things that are a little bit odd, maybe things that are off the beaten path. I quite like that. I quite like being different. I've always kind of been that way. And I think the dial on this watch is just so different. It's actually inspired by the Japanese painting method called Kira-zuru. Now, the translation to this is sparkling painting. So basically the painting moves, the painting comes to life. And when you look at this dial, you can truly see that. It's pale blue, but when you reflect it in the light, you get tons of beautiful textures coming up. It's absolutely phenomenal. I still think and still believe to this day that Grand Seiko are the king of dials. Next up, we have my Certina DS Action Diver with the supplier code C032807220411. Now, yes, I know what you're thinking. God's sake, Certina, get your model number sorted, because that is crazy. Now, guys, to be honest with you, this was given to me from Certina to film with and to feel and to look. Is this watch for me? It's probably not, but that doesn't mean that Certina aren't a fantastic brand, and there is another watch for me. I'm just not a fan of the bimetal, and I also like different colored dials to the blue. Now, yes, this is a fantastic watch at its core, but the style elements, the cosmetics aren't for me. It's almost like you saying to me, I've got a red car for you, and I say, I love the car, but get it changed to black, and then I might buy it. It's just the cosmetics. Aside from the cosmetics, this watch actually wears really nicely. It seriously does. It comes in at 38mm in diameter, which is pretty incredible for a diving watch that goes to 300 meters water resistance. Now, I would like to see this a little bit chunkier because when I get sports watches, I like them a little bit bigger, maybe verging on the 40 to 41 mark. I would like to see that from Certina. It also has I believe it's a Powermatic 80 movement with a Vacheron balance spring. Now, if I remember rightfully, this is the same movement that Tissot have used in their watches. So comparatively, I would put this on par with Tissot. I respect every single watch brand in the industry for multiple different reasons, and I don't ever have a prejudice against certain brands because I know that everyone's tastes are different. I mean, this might not be for me, but it might be for you sitting at home. It might be for Drew in the studio. And if they change some of the aesthetics about it, it probably would be for me. But one thing that I respect above all else from Certina is their contribution to the Sea Turtle Conservatory. Conservatory? No, that's a greenhouse. Conservancy. In my lifestyle as a photographer and videographer, I say this all the time. Charity means a lot, especially when it comes to the well-being of our planet, which unfortunately is not in a good way at the moment, guys. So that really means a lot to me. Next up, we have a watch that comes up again and again and again. And I keep reviewing it because I love it. And also I say Omega weird, and that's a comment that gets brought up quite a lot, even though Daniel Craig says it the same way as me.
Omega watch. Omega.
Who's right? This Omega Seamaster's model number is 210.30.42.20.04.001. For those at the back, but also for my own pleasure, I'll be talking about the specs of this Omega again, and also the changes that have come in my kind of Omega Seamaster journey. So this is the Great White. It has a ceramic bezel, a white dial. It has the helium escape valve at 10 o'clock. It goes to 300 meters in water resistance, has a COSC and METAS certified movement, an open caseback, a screw down crown, has a date window at the 6 o'clock mark, not the 3 o'clock mark, and just overall is absolutely stunning. The long story short, guys, is that when I look at this watch, I'm reminded of my dad. I'm reminded of watching James Bond with my dad. And I think that's why I have such a special connection to the Omega Seamaster, but in particular this Omega Seamaster. Now, yes, there's been a couple of changes over the years, going from the metal bracelet to the rubber strap to the NATO strap. I love the look and aesthetic of the NATO strap, but one thing that I don't like is that it pushes the head of the watch up a little bit. So actually, coming from someone that's tried everything, I do prefer the rubber. And on that note, I hope she doesn't mind me talking about this, but yesterday I went on a date. And when I go on a date, I kind of dress kind of smart, casually like this. And the watch that I always pick up, because I think just stylistically it wears so well, is this model. This Omega means a lot to me. And that is the Omega Seamaster Great White, and it actually reminds me of the previous Omega Seamaster Great White that I had, which I'm still not over. It was actually my biggest watch journey regret, and I'm gonna link it up here or up here for you at the moment. Next up is the Blancpain, the Tudor Blancpain ETA version. But before we get onto that, we are almost at 20,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for building this incredible watch community. And this channel will always be about documenting my watch journey, and hopefully by doing that, helping you on your watch journey. If you could hit that subscribe button, it would really mean a lot to me. Thank you so much. This Tudor Heritage Blancpain reference is 7922R. This model is commonly known as the Smiley because of that self-winding little smile at the bottom of the dial. That's a pretty cool detail. But what another cool detail is the fact that it has a rose on the dial instead of the shield. Now this is because these watches have an ETA movement and not the Tudor in-house movement that the Blancpains now come with. So there's a couple of key differences here, and one of them is that the new in-house variants are a little bit thicker than the old models with the ETA movements. The next is the rose on the dial, and of course that self-winding in the smiley kind of format. I got this watch when I was quite young, and I wanted something a little bit different, a little bit flash. As I've said before, I like things that are a little bit different. I like things that not everybody likes, and that's kind of why I was drawn to that model. I love the black dial against the gold numerals, but also, more than that, I love the burgundy bezel. And I also love the fact that that sounds really, really nice. The burgundy bezel just looks vintage without looking old. And that's hard to do. The bracelet on this model as well is sturdy, and it's really nice. This is probably my most sporty watch, I would say. But I do have to say, when I got my Omega Seamaster, this watch, it just didn't get worn as much as I would have liked. And I don't really know why it happened. It used to be my favorite. And I don't know if it is anymore. I think that when you're picking between kids, you can't choose a favorite, but you know who the favorite is. But that is enough of that. I'll move on to the next watch. And this one is pretty exciting, and it throws me back to a time where I was in Zermatt. This is the Mission to Mercury variant with the model number SO33A100. This is a watch that you have all heard far too much about. This is a watch that literally made the internet explode. It was unbelievable. Our most viewed video to this day is when I bought this model in Zermatt. It was just an absolute phenomenon. Even today, even now, people can't get these watches. People are still queuing up to get these watches. It's just madness. Now, this video isn't about the specs of these watches. It's not about, you know, how thick they are and the case diameter and all those kind of things, because you can just look them up. It's about the story behind them. So I went to Zermatt in Switzerland. I was filming a project with someone you might know. And when I was filming these projects, we stopped in at the Swatch store. This was peak Moonswatch hype, I would say. And surprisingly, they actually had a couple in. And that's where I got this watch. And whenever I look at this watch, I'm reminded of that job that I got in Zermatt and hanging out with some brilliant people and talking about watches. Now, there has been a ton of mixed reviews about the Omega Moonswatch, but in my opinion, I think it's marketing genius. I think it's getting a younger demographic into the watch industry. And to us, watch lovers, watch nerds, that's a great thing because it's expanding people that you can talk watch nerdery to. It's just, I think it's genius, personally. And also, something that's quite interesting is the sales of the Omega Moonswatch, or the Omega Moonwatch rather, since this release have skyrocketed because people are buying into the story and they previously weren't aware of the story. So all it's doing is raising awareness for the watch industry. Why isn't that a good thing? And I know what the argument is here. The argument is, well, the quality isn't where it should be. But remember guys, this is an Omega Swatch watch. It's not an Omega Moonwatch, and it's a bit of fun. And yes, for 200 and I think it's around £18, it's on the more expensive side of fun, but it still is a bit of fun. And to me, watches are about memories, and I've attached a pretty incredible memory to this watch, and it'll never be sold. Next up is a watch that is, it's not here. It's not here because I lost it. It is the Casio F-91W. This thing was incredible. I loved it dearly, but I took it to Thailand and I don't know how I lost it. I don't know where it is, but it's gone. Next up is probably the most important watch in this collection. It's a watch that means the world to me, and it's the Oris Artelier skeleton watch. The model number on this watch is 017347721-07521665FC. Guys, Oris, if you're listening, I love you, but sort out your model numbers. That is ridiculous. But let's talk about this Oris Artelier skeleton watch. When I was 17, I'd been in the luxury watch industry for roughly around a year. And my mum and dad asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I wanted my first luxury watch. And I said, I love skeletonized watches. I love things where you can see into the intricacies of the movement, the engine of this watch, the beating heart. I love being able to see that. And this is the watch they came back with. It is visibly damaged. I've put this thing through its paces. I have loved this watch, but I like that because it looks like it has character. Actually, one of the lugs has almost came out because of the damage that's on it, and the face is just, it's scratched to hell. But I just love this watch. Now, the actual specs on this watch are pretty pleasant as well. I mean, it comes in at 40 millimeters in diameter. It is a little bit thicker than the average watch, and it has a leather strap. Now, normally, I'm not into leather watches, leather straps. Imagine having a leather watch. I wonder if that's happened before. Now, apart from the skeletonized, beautiful dial where you can see into that movement, the specs of this watch are actually quite pleasant. It comes in at 40 millimeters and has a leather strap. Now, this is one of the very few watches that I'd say the leather strap actually suits it. And actually, it wears a little bit bigger than a 40 because it doesn't really have a bezel, which gives it more dial real estate. So it looks a little bit bigger. It just looks like a very vintage, classic looking watch. I can also almost imagine taking the leather strap away and it looking like a pocket watch. It's that kind of classic style. Everyone has a watch in their collection that they will never sell, that represents a moment in time, a moment in their life that they look back on with fondness, whether that's a birthday, a graduation, starting a new job, whatever it is. Watches represent memories. They represent a moment in time where you felt happy, where you felt connection with the family, where you felt proud of yourself. That's what watches represent. So what I want you to tell me is what your watches represent. What watches are in your collection and what memories do they spark in your mind? And that concludes this watch collection video 2022. What an incredible year it's been. Thank you guys so much again for building this insane watch community. This is truly staggering. The fact that this is my job, that talking about watches is my job, is heartwarming. Thank you so much. If you could hit that subscribe button, it would be much appreciated. This is the Chisholm Hunter channel. My name is Harrison, and I'll see you in a couple of days.